In a Nuzlocke, any Pokemon that faints is boxed forever, and I'm gonna try to beat one in Pokemon Violet using only Dragon types. In fact, I'm gonna try to make it to the final boss I've been hearing so much about. So let me know your favorite Dragon type down in the comments while you leave this video a like and subscribe to the channel. And right away we encounter the first issue with this run. None of these guys are dragons. And so Miraidon and I had to set out on a bit of an adventure across the land, searching far and wide. And in doing so, I managed to locate quite a few Dragon-type Pokemon. The only issue being they were all way too high level for our cap of the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon. Thinking I was defeated, the solution eventually revealed itself as I found a Swablu raid. Now Swablu isn't a dragon type, but since it evolves into one, I'm going to be including both it and Scralp as eligible encounters. Now this particular Swablu has the Fairy Terra type, which could come in very handy, much like its attack boosting nature, since our main attacking move for a while is going to be Peck. While doing some further exploring, I do manage to find the new dragon type Cyclizar, and I do manage to catch it, but being at level 19, it's gonna have to chill in the box for a while. And thus we have to take on the first gym leader with a lonely Swablu. Being a flying type, Swablu definitely has the advantage versus Katie's bug types. However, since it's not yet a dragon and has the dual normal type, Nimble's double kick does neutral damage. And since I'm looking to take as little damage as possible before she sends in Teddy Ursa, I Terrasilize into a fairy type to take less damage from a resisted double kick. From there I can take it out with a second peck as Katie sends in her Tarantula. It too manages to do some resisted damage with a bug bite before falling to a couple of pecks as well. The second peck happened to be a critical hit, and there's a good chance I'd have to take another bug bite if that wasn't the case. Katie then sends in her ace Pokemon Teddy Ursa, which she Terrasilizes into a bug type. I take the first turn to go for a Growl as it goes for a Fury Swipes, which hits me 3 times, and if it keeps going for Fury Swipes, we're definitely in a bad spot. The next turn I hit it with a peck, which is looking like it's a 3-hit KO. I was then expecting another Fury Swipes, just praying for a low hit count, but Teddy Ursa ends up going for a resisted Fury Cutter. I then go for another peck, and if Teddy Ursa gets 4 or 5 hits with Fury Swipes, Swablu goes down and we lose the run, but once again, it just goes for Fury Cutter. So I can just take out its remaining health with a peck the following turn, granting me the first gym badge. Continuing my travels, I run into an unexpected Applin raid. Now Applin itself is not exactly a great Pokemon, but at this point, I'll take anything I can get, and that Rock Terror type is probably something we can put to use. Nice bikes you got there, losers. Our second gym fight is versus Brassius the Grassmaster, and his ace Sudowoodo is actually a potentially huge threat. His first Pokemon, however, is a Petalil, and I do a bit under half of the peck as it then misses a Sleep Powder. We're not too worried about it hitting, since a few resisted Mega Drains while we wake up wouldn't have been a problem. But being able to take it out with a high roll peck the next turn is certainly nice. His second Pokemon is a Smoliv, which I easily handle with a couple of pecks. This just leaves his ace, Sudowoodo. My strategy here was to Terrasilize into a Fairy type, expecting Sudowoodo to go for a Rock Throw, which would have been super effective before I Terrastilized. And to reduce damage further, I can get off a Growl before Sudowoodo even gets to move, reducing its attack. However, Brassius apparently completely calls my bluff, going for Trailblaze anyway, and with the speed boost he gets from it, it's enough to outspeed me the next turn, hitting me with another Trailblaze. I then try to do some damage with Peck, but it's pretty pathetic. The next Trailblaze then gets me down to just 2 HP, as another Peck isn't even enough to take Sudowoodo below half. Now, I don't even think I need to mention how desperate it is to be so backed into a corner you're forced to swap out into your Applin. The one good thing is at least we quad resist Trailblaze, but Rock Throw does a bit more damage as I just set up a Defense Curl. Because of this, the following Rock Throw does a bit less damage as I set up to +2 with a second Curl. And while Defense Curl boosts my defense, a secondary effect of it is that it also boosts the power of Rollout. But even with that said, the first hit does some pretty pathetic damage. I then managed to connect with a second one, still doing a fairly small amount. Another Rock Throw does 6 damage to me, leaving me at just 9, meaning I can only take 1 more hit as I leave Sudowoodo in the red with another Rollout. One more Rock Throw leaves me at 3 HP, and I don't end up missing the Rollout, taking out Sudowoodo and amazingly granting us the second gym badge with Applin, meaning we finally get to add Cyclizar to the team. The new level cap has a ton of encounters open up to us, the first of which being Goomy, one of the weakest dragons of all time. That being said, its massive special defense once it evolves could potentially be put to some use. I then head to West Province Area 2, and in a cave full of dragons, I find myself a Gibble. Now, Gibble does evolve at the level cap of 24, but since it's already at level 24 when I catch it, that's not going to be possible. Here I also run into a Bagon. Since Paldea is an open world, instead of the usual 1 encounter per area rule, I've been playing my Gen 9 runs allowing 1 of each eligible encounter. Unfortunately, this Bagon is level level 26, however, so it's gonna have to be chilling in the box. This leads us to our third gym battle versus the shocking streamer Iono. And since she starts out with a weakling like Wattrel, I came up with a bit of a strategy. After weakening its attack with Breaking Swipe, I swap out into Gible. And honestly, seeing how much damage that Breaking Swipe did, this was a bit of an unnecessary mistake. My eagerness to send in Gible here comes from picking up the Swords Dance TM so that I can set up my attack, but in doing so, I take about half damage from Pluck before I can even take out the Wattrel. All of that so their Luxio can just come in and lower my attack back down with Intimidate and then flinch me with a Bite. The point I'm trying to get across here is that I should have just stayed in with Cyclizar in the first place, who can easily take out the Luxio with a couple of Breaking Swipes. Heck, Bellybolt can only hit Cyclizar for resisted damage, so we easily take it out with Breaking Swipes as well. The only issue being that it managed to chip Cyclizar down to just 15 HP. So as Iono sends in her Mismagius, I realize that my two best Pokemon are pretty heavily compromised. But that's exactly when it hit me. Iono's Mismagius only has 2 attacking moves in Charge Beam and Hex. And so since Cyclizar is a normal type, it's only ever gonna go for Charge Beam, so I can safely swap out into Gible. Conversely, Gible's ground type means that Mismagius can only attack with Hex, so we can safely swap back into Cyclizar. Now this noble art is what we in the Pokemon community call PP stalling. Nothing in the game is stopping me from just switching back and forth between these two until Mismagius has no attacking moves left to hit me with. Then once I'd wasted 25 minutes of my life, I still had to deal with the fact that this thing has Confuse Ray. To deal with this, I send in Goomy, whose abysmal attack stat actually is helpful in this case, since if it ends up hitting itself in confusion, it doesn't do too much damage to itself. Goomy did manage to do some chip damage with Dragon Breath during these 5 minutes I'm never getting back. Then once I'd stalled out all the PP of Confuse Ray, I swap out into Applin as the Mismagius starts doing damage to itself with Struggle. Sometimes the least efficient way to win happens to be the most efficient way to win. After claiming our third badge and Gible evolving into Gabite, I add Bag onto the team and evolve it into Shelgon before it's time to face our next challenge versus Kofu. Not wanting to end up in the same situation as last gym, I came a little bit more prepared this time. I start out by weakening the Veluza with a couple of Breaking Swipes. I then made sure to give Cyclizar the TM for Trailblaze that Brassius gives us to get a speed boost upon taking the Veluza out. This will be important as he sends in his second Pokemon Wugtrio. I start out by going for a Breaking Swipe, lowering Wugtrio's attack, which activates its Gooey, lowering my speed that I raised with Trailblaze as it then hits me for less damage with Headbutt. I then go for another Trailblaze to take it out, increasing my speed, and Gooey once again bringing me back to neutral. This brings in Kofu's final Pokemon Crabominable, which he terastallizes into a water type. I'm expecting it to go for a Slam here for neutral damage, so I decide to U-turn out into Shelgon, which has the highest defense on my team, but the Crabominable ends up missing. I then outspeed for a super effective Thunderfang, as a Slam does about a third of my health. Another Thunderfang leaves the Crabominable with a very unfortunate sliver, as a Slam leaves me at 14 HP, but the passive Sandstorm in the area is actually just enough to take Crabominable out. Nice.
Just like a Master Fisher, you held on tight till the last second and reeled in victory.
I don't know about Master Fisher. I've always been better at managing the bait. I suppose you could call me a Master Bait. Anyway, with the new level cap at 36, I can head to this secret cave at Glossiado Mountain to catch myself a Frigibax. Not only does it have the super helpful Ice Terra type, but also an attack boosting nature. From there, we can finally evolve Swablu into a Dragon type, and while doing the gym puzzle, I think we just deleted a room full of people. But you know what they say, the ends justify the means, especially when the ends involve meeting Larry. And much like versus Kofu, I had a premeditated strategy, but this time around, it was a little bit more solid. I start out by Breaking Swiping Kamala to lower its attack, as a Slam does a little bit less than half. This gives me the perfect opportunity to use Shed Tail, passing a substitute as I swap in Altaria, dodging the Yawn on the switch. I can then go for Cotton Guard, boosting my defense to +3 as the Kamala goes for another Slam, but with that defense boost, it doesn't even break the sub. The Kamala then foolishly tries for a Sucker Punch as I set my defense up to +6 with another Cotton Guard. I then figure I'll set up as many Dragon Dances as I can get away with before the Kamala breaks my substitute. And this ends up being a lot, since Kamala misses a Slam, and then again, and again, before finally breaking my sub. I then annihilated the poor thing with a Pluck, sending in Larry's Dunsparce. And unfortunately, my boosts aren't quite enough to take this horrific creature out, which means it glares me. Regardless, however, my speed boost from the Dragon Dances mean I still outspeed, taking out the Dunsparce, sending in Larry's final Pokemon, Staraptor. It intimidates on the switch, lowering my attack a bit, and then terastallizes into a normal type. However, with its only 2 attacking moves being Facade and Aerial Ace, and my defense being at +6, it doesn't really scare me, because even though I get fully paralyzed for a turn, I can easily knock it out the next. And with the 5th gym badge now in hand and the level cap increased to 42, we can evolve Frigibax into Arctobax. Having the badge also gives us access to buying some extremely useful battle items like the Focus Sash, Expert Belt, and Choice Scarf. But not just that, it also lets us buy some evolution items, including the Sweet and Tart Apple. Let me know your favorite Applin evolution down in the comments, but for me, it's gotta be Appleton. I mean, just look at this little guy, he's so small. Okay, the MC of RIP is possibly the coolest title of all time. Now, just in case you missed the rap battle I had with Rhyme in my last video, I definitely recommend checking that one out. But for now, we've got to take on our team of ghost types in a double battle. Now, Rhyme's Banette has Icy Wind, which is quad effective against both the Pokemon I decide to send in first, which is why after tanking a slash from Mimikyu, Gabite instantly takes Banette out with an Expert Belt boosted Shadow Claw. This way we can avoid any Icy Wind related shenanigans, and I can set up a Leech Seed against the Mimikyu with Appleton at the end of the turn. Rhyme then sends in her Houndstone, and since we knocked a Pokemon out, the gimmick of this gym makes the crowd go wild and we get an attack and special attack boost to our Pokemon. I'm expecting the Houndstone to go for a play rough here, so I swap out of my Gabite into Altaria as the Mimikyu hits Appleton with a slash. This leaves Altaria just below half, and Appleton can set up a Leech Seed on Houndstone, meaning we have Leech Seed recovery from both Mons. Mimikyu then once again goes for a slash against Appleton as Altaria sets up a Cotton Guard, which means we can survive the incoming play rough from the Houndstone. Appleton moving last removes Mimikyu's disguise with an Apple Acid, also harshly lowering its special defense. I'm once again expecting Houndstone to hit Altaria with a play rough, so this time I decide to Terastallize into a Fairy type so that it won't hit me for super effective damage. I'm then pretty unimpressed with the damage output from a Dragon Pulse as a slash hits Cotton Candy down to 21. The main gimmick of this double battle gym is that anytime you or Rhyme Terastallizes, you get an Omni boost to your team. And as you can imagine, this is incredibly overpowered. Because of the attack boost, Appleton can now easily take out Houndstone's remaining health with a Sucker Punch, and Cotton Candy follows that up by taking out Mimikyu with a Pluck, leaving only Rhyme's final Pokemon Toxtricity. And after Terastallizing, this thing is in big trouble since Sucker Punch is now super effective, and a Dragon Pulse following that up can easily take it out, granting us the 6th gym badge. Now, the last time I got this far in the game, I was completely blindsided by this fight versus Nemona, but this time I came prepared. Except none of this fight went as planned. You see, Nemona starts out this fight with Lycanroc, so I figured I can do some damage with Appleton. Except I completely forgot this thing has Sand Attack. This of course made it infinitely more difficult to set up a Leech Seed, which didn't even happen at all. Nope, I instead had to lose over half my health to a couple of Rock Slides before taking it out with an Apple Acid. With Lycanroc dealt with, she sends in her own Dragon-type Sliggoo, and as I swap into Cyclizar, I barely survive in the red. However, since Sliggoo isn't very physically bulky, Cyclizar can take it out with a single Dragon Claw. Her third Pokemon is Pawmot, but Gabite can easily handle that thing with a Dig. This just leaves her starter Pokemon Quackavole, which slapped my Pokemon left and right, leaving them pretty brutalized. The Quackavole had boosted speed from Aqua Step and Ice Spinner to hit me super effectively. I was honestly pretty sure that this was the end and we were just gonna wipe, but after giving it a bit of thought, there is one solution to this puzzle. Expecting Quackavole to go for an Aqua Jet, I can swap in Appleton, who quad resists, who then has a Sucker Punch to outspeed and take out Quackavole's remaining health. Often just taking a step back and analyzing the situation a bit further, there are ways to get out of these sticky situations in Nuzlockes. I'm talking about the emotional spectrum practice. Oh boy, I'm not sure what kind of emotional availability we're gonna be able to squeeze out of this thing. You doing great, Gabite. After that excruciating experience, we have to go up against the 7th gym leader, Tulip, and her psychic types. And since she leads with a pure physical attacker with Farigiraf, we can easily just set up with Cotton Candy to +6 with Cotton Guard, then proceed to put the Farigiraf to sleep with Sing, and Dragon Dance as many times as is necessary to take out every single Pokemon on our team with Acrobatics. I mean, let's be honest, there hasn't been a difficult psychic type gym since Generation 1, and Gen 3 doesn't count because it's the double battle that makes it difficult. With the 7th gym behind us, the next gym we have to face is Ice, which is a huge problem for our team of Dragon types. So I figure we need to upgrade the team a little bit, first picking up an Axew, which I can immediately evolve into Fracture. Then, since the level cap is 48, after doing just a little bit more training, we can evolve it into Haxorus. This of course means we can also evolve Gabite into Garchomp, and I make sure to get Goomy to evolve into Sliggoo. And thus we're prepared to take on the final gym leader, Grusha, who, as my comments corrected me, is a guy. Right off the the bat, I made sure to teach my Cyclizar Fire Fang so that we can outspeed Frostmoth and take it out with a quad-effective hit. Grusha then sends in Beartic, so I go for a Shed Tail, swapping out into Altaria for free as it breaks my substitute with an Icicle Crash. It's definitely gonna go for another Ice move since it's quad-effective, so I decided to Terrasilize into a Fairy type and go for Cotton Guard, which means that the incoming Icicle Crash doesn't do too much damage. I then start attacking with Acrobatics, which doesn't do too much since Beartic's fairly bulky, but 3 of them is enough to take it out. Grusha then sends in Titan, and with its massive HP stat, it takes 4 Acrobatics to take it out, meaning that a few Ice Spinners gets Cotton Candy down to just 12 HP in preparation for his final Pokemon. This is of course Grusha's own Altaria, and as you can see, my team's not looking great to handle it. Altaria being this low definitely forced me to improvise, swapping out into Sliggoo, who amazingly dodges the Hurricane on the switch. I then get hit by a Terra Stab Ice Beam, but Sliggoo's awesome special defense allows it to live on 16 HP and retaliate back with a pretty pathetic Dragon Pulse. From there, I swap out into my newly acquired Haxorus, who I know can survive this Ice Beam because of its Focus Sash, which it doesn't even need. An Outrage then should take out Altaria, but it survives on what must be like 1 HP. Ice Beam then of course knocks out Haxorus, ruining what was so far a perfect deathless run. Garchomp being faster is of course going to be able to clean up from there, but what an unfortunate way to earn our final badge to lose our first Pokemon. But we can't let that get us down because we have to prepare for our next challenge, the Pokemon League. And with an increased level cap, there are new Pokemon we can catch, among them the sushi Pokemon, but also some oldies but goldies like Dratini and Dreepy. And having the Ghost Terra type on Tiramisu here could be massively helpful, and with a bit of training, we can evolve it right away into Dracloak and finally Dragapult. But that's not all, we can also turn Shelgon into Salamence and Arctobax into Baxcalibur, meaning that the team I'm bringing to the Elite Four is Apple Pie the Appleton with Sucker Punch, Apple Acid, Leech Seed, and Protect. S'more the Garchomp with Crunch, Swords Dance, Dragonclaw, and Bulldoze. Cake Pop the Cyclizar with Breaking Swipe, Ice Spinner, Shed Tail, and U-Turn. Gelato the Baxcalibur with Ice Shard, Glaive Rush, Dragonclaw, and Ice Fang. Tiramisu the Dragapult with Dragon Darts, Dragon Dance, U-Turn, and Baton Pass. And finally, Croissant the Salamence with Brick Break, Dragonclaw, Thunderfang, and Crunch. With 6 fully evolved dragons, it's time to face the Elite Four. First off, Rika and her ground types. It may seem strange to lead with a Pokemon weak to Blizzard here, but with a Focus Sash, I would have survived anyway, and an Apple Acid can take care of the Whiscash. From there, Rika's second Pokemon is Donphan, so I decide to swap out of Appleton into Baxcalibur, who on the Switch predictably gets hit by a Poison Jab and doesn't get poisoned. I then decide to Terrasilize into an Ice type to get double stab on my Ice type moves and take the Donphan down to its sturdy with an Ice Fang. Donphan aims to retaliate back with a Stone Edge, but ends up missing, which in turn gives me the opportunity to just take it out with an Ice Shard the next turn. And while I don't have a super effective move against Camerupt, it turns out that double stab Ice Fang from Baxcalibur is too much to handle. Dugtrio's defense is that of a wet paper towel, so 1 Ice Shard is enough to take it out. As for Clodsire, its physical defense leaves a bit to be desired, so it too gets absolutely crushed by an Ice Fang. The second Elite Four member is Poppy, the Master of Steel types. She leads off with Copperajah, and I decide to lead with Focus Sash Dragapult. From there I go for a Dragon Dance, boosting both my attack and speed, as a Heavy Slam doesn't even get me down to my Sash. Now I don't know whose brilliant idea it was to give a Pokemon like Dragapult Baton Pass, but here we are, and I pass my boost to my Salamence. And after an Intimidate, Heavy Slam doesn't even do half, and a +1 Brick Break is enough to take out Copperajah. Corviknight is next, and it's one bulky bird for being able to withstand a +1 Expert Belt boosted Thunderfang, and I honestly got super scared as it goes for Brave Bird, leaving me at just 19 HP. I can then just take it out with a Flamethrower as Poppy sends in her Magnezone. With Sturdy, this thing can survive any hit, so I'm forced to swap out of Salamence into Garchomp, who dodges a Discharge. I then use a Crunch just to break Magnezone's Sturdy as it sets up a Light Screen. Outspeeding with Dig is then enough to take out Magnezone's remaining health. This sends in Poppy's next Pokemon, Bronzong. And I'm not super afraid of what this Bronzong can do to me, so I decide to set up to +2 attack with a Swords Dance as it hits me with a weak Zen Headbutt. I then set up a second Swords Dance, taking out the Bronzong with a Crunch, leaving Poppy only with her final Pokemon, Tinkaton. I decide to Terrasilize Garchomp into a Ground type here before Tinkaton Terrasilizes into a Steel type. I do this since I can outspeed with Dig, and the Terrasilization just gives me a little bit of extra damage, but honestly at +4, I think I would have just taken this thing out anyway. Coming up is everyone's favorite gym leader and Elite Four member, Larry. Leading with Tropius, my best option here is Baxcalibur, however, I do end up missing my Ice Fang the first turn, only allowing Tropius to set up a Sunny Day. This isn't really a problem since I can just take it out with an Ice Fang the following turn. What is a problem, however, is Staraptor's Intimidate, so once it comes in, I go ahead and swap out for Tiramisu. This way we can dodge close combat because of Ghost being immune to fighting, and go for a U-turn the next turn, swapping back out into Baxcalibur, who's now not intimidated and gets hit by a Brave Bird. Then because of my Choice Scarf, I can outspeed and take out the Staraptor in one hit with an Ice Fang. With the Scarf, I outspeed everything on Larry's team, but by terastallizing into an Ice type, I make sure that I can knock everything out in one hit as well. With one final Elite Four member remaining, Hassel seems on paper like he would be the most difficult member for us to deal with. However, taking a look at his team, both Noivern and Haxorus are the only ones who outspeed Gelato. This makes it incredibly easy to just slap a Scarf on Baxcalibur and sweep through his entire team with Glaive Rush. You can't do double damage to me the next turn if you don't get a next turn. Having defeated these dinguses, we now have to go up against the top champion herself, Geeta. With my full team alive versus hers, she leads with Espathra as I send in Baxcalibur. I go for a Scarf Crunch thinking it'll take it out, leaving Espathra in the red as it retaliates, hitting me with a Dazzling Gleam. It doesn't even do half, however, and we can pick up our first KO with another Crunch. The second Pokemon she sends in is King Gambit, which obviously threatens us out with a Steel-type move since Crunch won't do anything. So I go ahead and send in Garchomp, who tanks an Iron Head fairly well. We won't have to take another one, however, since we can easily outrun King Gambit's pathetic base speed of 50, and proceed to take it out with a Dig. This baits in Geeta's Veluzo, which does have Ice Fang, so I don't want to stay in with Garchomp. Expecting the Ice Fang, I once again swap into Gelato, however, it just goes for Liquidation, which I resist. I then go for a super effective Crunch, once again just falling short of the mark. Veluzo then hits a critical hit with Psycho Cut, leaving me at just 12 HP, and since it has Aqua Jet, I'm forced to switch out here. I switch in Cyclizar, to whom the Aqua Jet barely does anything, and I go for a Breaking Swipe the next turn, taking out the Veluza. This is actually a perfect spot to be in, as she sends in Go-Goat, which has Play Rough, so I can go for a Shed Tail to safely swap in Croissant. This allows me to get an Intimidate off to lower Go-Goat's attack before it breaks my substitute with a Play Rough. A Flamethrower from Salamence then isn't enough to take out the Go-Goat, meaning I have to take a -1 Play Rough here, which I survive on 56 HP. Another Flamethrower is then enough to take out the Go-Goat and the incoming Avalugg. Finally, we only have to deal with Geeta's last Pokemon, Glimmora. Expecting it to go for a Rock-type Terra Blast here, I swap in Garchomp, however, it goes for Dazzling Gleam, which of course isn't super effective since I'm only ground. I can then hit Glimmora with a Terra Stab boosted Dig, sealing the deal. However, if you've ever played this game, you'll know that while Geeta's the top champion, there's one champion fight after this versus Champion Nemona. And in my eyes, this fight is actually a lot more difficult. Leading with Lycanroc, I this time make the smart decision to lead with Cyclizar to go for a Breaking Swipe, lowering its attack as it sets up the Stealth Rocks. I then use Shed Tail to swap myself out into Garchomp, whose ground typing will resist any rock type move that this thing throws at me, not breaking the substitute. Lycanroc then goes for Drill Run, which is enough damage to take out the substitute, but it's given me a free turn to set up a Swords Dance. Lycanroc then hits me with a weak -1 Drill Run as I burrow underground and take it out the next turn with a Dig. This brings in Nemona's Goodra, but because it's once again lacking in physical defense, a +2 Dragon Claw easily knocks it out. Palmot, on the other hand, could pose to be a big problem since it has Ice Punch. That's why you see me terastallizing here, meaning it's not going to be quad effective, allowing me to survive a non-crit and take out the Palmot the following turn with a Dig. I really have no words to further express my disappointment with the Dunsparce, but at least Garchomp outspeeds it, and at +2, it's enough to take out with a single Dig. Earthworm, however, I won't be taking out with Dig because of its ability Earth Eater, which is kind of like a ground-type Volt Absorb. So I instead send in Apple Pie, who has to take an Iron Tail on the switch and unfortunately gets a defense drop. It then, however, dodges the next Iron Tail and manages to set up a Leech Seed, meaning I can just protect the next turn to get as much recovery as possible. This gives me enough health to survive yet another Iron Tail, however, it ends up missing as well, allowing me to hit an Apple Acid to lower its special defense harshly. I then protect yet another turn to get more recovery before swapping Apple Pie out. I go ahead and swap into Croissant, who gets off an Intimidate, lowering Earthworm's attack, which means the incoming Iron Tail does less damage. I then get just a little bit more recovery off of Leech Seed, which is actually enough to just straight take out the Earthworm. This just leaves Nemona's last Pokemon, Quackavole, so I swap out of Croissant expecting an Ice move here into Gelato. After Quackavole terastallizes, it hits me with an Ice Spinner, barely doing anything. I'm now expecting it to go for a super effective Brick Break, so I swap into Croissant to get off an extra Intimidate here and tank the Brick Break with my Flying type. As I now swap Salamence out, I can't swap it back in again because of the Stealth Rocks, and I go go into Tiramisu, who gets hit by an ice spinner but manages to survive. I then outspeed the next turn with a U-turn, swapping out into Appleton, which I actually was planning on sacrificing here since I didn't really see any other way to win. However, it misses the ice spinner on the switch and I end up surviving even though its quad effective the next turn, allowing me to go for an Apple Acid, just straight up taking out the Quackable. And since we've now defeated Nemona, we've completed the Victory Road. But that just means we have 2 more storylines to deal with before we can face the final boss. As for Arven's Titan quest, I'd already dealt with most of the Titans during my gym challenge, with only the Dragon Titan Tatsugiri remaining. However, it ended up being pretty easy to complete by just dropping a few thunders with Dragapult, completing what has to be the most heartwarming story in all of Pokemon. We then get a call from Arven's dad, who tells us we must save him from deep in Area 0 with utmost urgency, so we of course ignore that completely and have a Pokemon battle. Arven starts the fight by sending in Greedent as I send in my Dragapult. And since this Greedent basically can't touch me, I go ahead and set up a couple of Dragon Dances, after which I can take it out with a couple of Dragon Darts. Wait, they changed Dragon Dart's animation to be a laser cannon? Excuse me, what? Our Laser Blasts then easily take out the Pepper Pokemon and the bulky Garganicle, even this cursed Tentacruel thing. I then decide to Terrastalize against his Cloyster just in case I miss and he goes for an Ice-type move. However, I don't end up missing my Thunder, taking it out in one hit. This just leaves my Bostiff, so I swap into Salamence, and I can't believe I had to hospitalize the dog again. With Arven's story behind us, we now have to deal with Team Star, and unlike the other stories, I hadn't touched this one at all. And since my team was closing in on the level cap, I had to rely on the B team. The first 3 of these members, however, were low enough level that I could easily just sweep through them. I had just a bit more trouble taking on the Fairy-type leader Ortega. What ended up saving me in this fight was the combination of Altaria Terrastalizing into a Fairy-type to not be weak to Fairies, and then set up my defenses with Cotton Guard, making it so that Ortega's Pokemon could barely hurt me since they're all physical attackers. This made it very safe to crush the rest of Ortega's team. As for the Fighting-type Team Star leader, a simple acrobatic strategy was enough to get us the 18th badge. We then find out that Clive is actually Mr. Clavel? Excuse me, what? He then challenges us to a battle, but the most difficult part about this fight was watching the 3 FPS trainers in the background. Having defeated the director, we find out that Cassiopeia is actually Penny. Didn't see that one coming at all. And to end off the Team Star story arc, we have to take her on with all her evolutions. And so, since she leads with Umbreon, I decide to lead with Altaria, who can take it out with a few Moon Blasts. Her second Pokemon is Vaporeon, so I decide to Terrastalize into a Fairy-type, expecting the Aurora Beam. But first I outspeed and hit it with an Acrobatics, and I completely miss that this is a critical hit. This makes an immense amount of difference since the next Acrobatics doesn't even come close to taking out the Vaporeon, allowing it to take me out with a Hydro Pump. And being unattentive like this has to be one of the dumbest ways I've ever lost a Pokemon in a Nuzlocke. Regardless, I can take out Vaporeon's remaining health with a Dragon Darts, and then as Flareon comes in, I decide to use a Dragon Dance as it hits me with a weak Flare Blitz. 2 hits from Dragon Darts is then enough to take out both the Flareon and Jolteon. She then sends in her Leafeon, using priority Baby Doll Eyes to lower Tiramisu's attack before I can go for a U-turn, not being able to take out the Leafeon. This, however, works out perfectly since I now get to send in Cyclizar at the end of the turn for free and can take out the Leafeon with an Ice Spinner. This just leaves Penny's Terra Pokemon Sylveon, and it also goes for priority Baby Doll Eyes right away, allowing me to go for a Shed Tail, sending in Gelato for free. I then go for a Scarf Icicle Crash, which does a little bit more than half as the Sylveon hits me with a Moon Blast. This of course breaks my substitute, leaving me unprotected, which doesn't matter in the long run since I can outspeed with my Choice Scarf the next turn, taking out Sylveon for the win. And now that we've defeated Cassiopeia and finished off the Team Star storyline, Arven gives us a call, compelling us to go to Area 0. And so, after assembling the Misfit Avengers and doing some unsafe air travel, we find out that Giga Chad Turo is actually an evil AI. And so, to save everything that's good in this world, we have to take him on and all of his Paradox Pokemon. Leading with Mecha Volcarona, I send in Scarf Garchomp. Iron Moth has a base speed of 110, outspeeding Garchomp, so the Choice Scarf is necessary to move first and burrow underground and dodge the Air Slash, meaning I can then one-shot with a quad super effective dig the next turn without Garchomp taking any damage. Turo's second Pokemon is Iron Bundle, but unlike Delibird, this thing actually packs a punch. Not wanting to be turned into air airplane food, I swap out into Gelato, who can tank the freeze dry reasonably well. I then terrestrialize into an ice type to take as little damage as possible from freeze dry, but the Iron Bundle just sets up Snowscape, which ends up helping me out as well. Ironhead then doesn't do too much damage despite being super effective, but the Iron Bundle just insists on going for Snowscape every single turn until I knock it out. This reveals Turo's next Pokemon, Iron Thorns, which has to be one of my favorite Paradox designs. With the looming threat of a Stone Edge, I swap out of Gelato into Garchomp, who can resist the incoming rock move. I can then outspeed with a Dig, burrowing myself underground. However, the Mecha Tyranitar goes for an Earthquake, being powered up, taking me down to just 74 HP before a quad effective hit takes it out. Turo's next Mon is the best investor in the Pokemon world, Iron Hands. He is holding on to those game stonks and he ain't letting go. Even without my Choice Scarf, I outspeed here, going for a Dig as I dodge a Drain Punch, then hitting with a Dig, which isn't quite enough to take it out, allowing Iron Hands to take out Garchomp. Iron Hands is just always going to outlast you in the long game. I then send in Tiramisu and go for a Dragon Laser, which to my surprise isn't even enough to take Iron Hands out. This is unfortunate since its Iron Head then breaks my Focus Sash. The following turn, however, just one laser is enough to take Iron Hands out. Turo's second to last Pokemon is Iron Jugulis. I go for a neutral U-turn, which actually does a decent chunk of damage, sending in my Cyclizar. I end up having to take a Dark Pulse on the switch, which unfortunately does just above half damage, as I then go for an Ice Spinner the next turn, which also just falls short. Fortunately, so does the next Dark Pulse, leaving me at just 10 HP. This lets me follow up with a U-turn, taking out the Iron Jugulis and allowing me to swap out as if it were Switch mode. I decide to swap in Apple Pie as Turo shows me his final Pokemon, the Iron Valiant. This thing is an absolute monster with 130 base attack and 116 base speed. On top of that, its booster energy activates Cork Drive, raising its attack a further 20%. And right away, a super effective Spirit Break takes Apple Pie down to just 57 HP, after which I can set up a Leech Seed. I follow that up with Protect the next turn to get as much recovery as possible before swapping out into Salamence. This way I can save my favorite Granny Smith Dragon and get an Intimidate to lower Iron Valiant's attack. A super effective Spirit Break does massive damage on the switch, however, and since I'm not faster, it takes me out the next turn. Au revoir, mon croissant. I then send in Cyclizar to do some chip damage with U-turn, which does a lot less than I thought it would. Then expecting it to hit me with a Brick Break, I get a free switch into Tiramisu, which gets a bit of Leech Seed damage as well. Dragapult then also goes for U-turn, but this time I don't have anything great to switch into, so I just go into Cyclizar, who unfortunately has to bite the dust. Cyclizar fainting here unfortunately means we miss out on one turn of Leech Seed. I decide to send in Gelato as bait, since he'll most certainly go for a Brick Break, allowing me to switch to Tiramisu, getting a bit of additional Leech Seed damage. It's now probably going to go for Spirit Break, which isn't good for any of my Pokemon, so I go for a U-turn, swapping out into Gelato, who has the highest defense. And because I've terrestrialized, it doesn't do super effective damage. The Leech Seed at the end of the turn then puts Iron Valiant at super low health, meaning I can go for a Terra Double Stab Ice Shard, taking out Iron Valiant and granting me the victory. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I beat a Pokemon Violet Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Dragon types. And what better way to complete a Dragon type run than to beat the Paradise Protection Protocol once and for all in a Miraidon mirror match. This battle is of course scripted for us to win, much like this script is telling me to tell you to subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon Challenge content. So until we see each other next time, just remember, they call me Antler Boy, cause my bars are live. Your rhyme's as dead as your Pokemon, you might need a revive. You know my flow's on fire, I hit like I'm a champ with guts, so I'ma ride this beat to victory, and you can ride on these nuts.